Well, good evening, everyone. I'm honoured to welcome you to the 2021 Australian Minerals Industry Parliamentary Dinner, hosted by the Minerals Council of Australia. I'd like to welcome our distinguished guests. Running a little bit late tonight because we have a cabinet meeting, but I will officially welcome the Honourable Scott Morrison MP, Prime Minister of Australia, the Honourable Michael McCormack MP, Deputy Prime Minister, Ministers and Shadow Ministers, Senators and Members of Parliament, Your Excellencies. And welcome to industry colleagues and other friends from across Australia. I would like to acknowledge the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people, who are the traditional custodians of the Canberra area, and pay my respects to the elders past and present of all Australia's Indigenous peoples. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people are the first people of Australia and are the traditional owners on much of the land on which our mining operations occur, as well as our neighbours, colleagues and highly valued partner in the resources sector. What a great honour to be hosting this event tonight at the centre of Australia's parliamentary democracy. It's been 2 years since Minerals Week, a time for industry, the federal government, its departments, NGOs and academia to look at the big picture and consider the future of mining. We say it often, mining is good for Australia, because when mining is strong, all Australians are winners. That means higher real wages growth, record exports, world-leading innovation, jobs for young people, stronger regional communities, and genuine Indigenous economic empowerment and opportunity. Australian mining is proud to have worked with governments across Australia to keep the industry operating while keeping workers, families, and communities safe during COVID-19. As the global economy recovers, impacts of the pandemic, global trends, including increased urbanisation, rising incomes, and electrification of non-energy sectors like transportation via electric vehicles, are driving massive growth in mineral and energy commodity demand. This means Australia is in a prime position to meet surging demand from all corners of the globe for our high-quality minerals and metals. Already this week, we've heard how the ongoing production phase of the mining boom from 2008 to 2020 has lifted the prosperity of every Australian household by almost $15,000 annually, and how a modest series of productivity reforms would enrich households by over $11,500 by 2030. Put another way, Australia's economic growth would have been 13% lower in 2020, the first year of COVID-19 pandemic, had there not been a permanent increase in the size of the mining industry from 2005 onwards. Over the next few days, the industry will discuss how it can maximise demand growth opportunities to create shared value for all Australians, with inspirational stories backed by new reports and practical tools. The MCA showed the Australian minerals industry's determination to take serious action on climate change with the release of its Climate Action Plan. The progress report released today shows the industry is already making strong progress through technology investments and innovative procurement. The industry is not just talking about decarbonisation, we're getting on with the job. Actions underway in companies today can result in annual abatement of 1/3 of major reporting companies' annual emissions in the future, out to 2030. Tomorrow, we will release a report which analyses the contribution of the minerals and mining equipment, technology and services to Australia's ongoing prosperity. I acknowledge the significant and ongoing impacts of the pandemic on our society and industry. Will complement federal government measures by launching the Mine Well mental health tool to provide prevention, intervention and education in mental health and well-being for Australian miners and their families. So when we say there's more to Australian mining, we want to show all Australians this week how we are continuing to back them and support the future of our nation, and how there is much more we can do when we get the opportunity. And to finish, I would like to thank all of our sponsors, including dinner sponsor Rio Tinto and our Minerals Week gold sponsor Dyno Nobel. Our regular guests at this dinner may be wondering where the port is this year. Well, it's here. COVID doesn't permit us to have it on the tables, but collectors like me will find the traditional Dyno Nobel bottles on a table at the back of the room for collection on your way out this evening. Please don't forget to take the bottles with you. Welcome to the 2021 Australian Minerals Industry Parliamentary Dinner. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, and have a great evening.
Good evening, everyone. In a year when we should never take the simple pleasure of getting together in person for granted, what a tremendous sight it is to see our friends and supporters gathered in the Great Hall of Parliament House. Welcome, one and all. Our industry is grateful to political parties at all levels across Australia for their united determination to back Australian mining through and beyond the COVID-19 pandemic. This steady approach has kept our workforce, their families, and the communities in which the industry operates safe and healthy in the most trying of times. In particular, Australia's minerals industry acknowledged the government's strong leadership in balancing the need to keep the community safe and our economy strong. The Prime Minister and his team have shown courage, resilience, and a steady hand in standing up for Australia's interests and our values. Prime Minister, your staunch, vocal, and highly visible support for the resources sector has given our companies the confidence and certainty that the Australian government has its back in tough times. The minerals sector has continued as a powerhouse of Australia's economy, exports, job creation and innovation through technology since the pandemic descended more than a year ago now. The sector made a record $39.3 billion contribution in taxes and royalties in 2019-20 to fund better services and infrastructure across Australia. And 1 in 10 Australians are employed directly and indirectly in the mining and in the mining equipment, technology and services sectors, a total of 1.1 million jobs. Unwavering support from government at all levels and across the political divide, backing mining as an essential industry has been and will continue to be vital. Yet we couldn't have continued to operate to benefit all Australians without the people who work in the industry, the families that support them, and the regional communities that sustain them and support mining. Tonight we pay tribute to workers and families from the Bowen Basin, the Hunter Valley, Mackay, the Pilbara, Kalgoorlie, Katherine, Bendigo, and the great regions and towns from across Australia who keep mining strong around the clock. There's also the thousands of businesses that supply and support mining through their ingenuity and resilience. These small businesses, mining equipment, technology and services sector companies, including many Indigenous-owned and operated firms, have kept Australians in work and providing minerals to the world. In 2021, Australian mining is still backing small business in our regions and in the cities. Even as we emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic, standing together and helping each other where we can is more important than ever before. MCA member companies are continuing to work closely with local community groups, councils, government, agencies, remote Indigenous communities and many others to meet local health and social needs and keep people in highly paid, highly skilled jobs. Yet for all that we've achieved, Australian mining is not taking anything for granted as we face resurgent competition and the shifting sands of global markets. Australian mining is proud to be a responsible and reliable supplier of the minerals needed by a growing and rapidly changing world. We also know we need to listen to the community to understand and act on changing expectations. Mining is not only a lot different from 10 years ago, it's doing things differently to the way they were even a year ago. As an industry which is such a large and proud part of regional Australia, we took a big step towards giving communities more confidence and trust in how we operate when we signed up to the Towards Sustainable Mining, a system earlier this year. Even though Australian mining is already a global leader in sustainability performance, we need to show the community what we're doing through site-level reporting on safety, environmental and social indicators, including the practical action our members are taking to reduce emissions, so they can be sure that our actions match our words. Earlier this year, we announced that we will be taking action to eliminate workplace sexual harassment in its response to the alarming findings of the Australian Human Rights Commission's Respect at Work inquiry. This response is being driven at CEO level within our member companies because that's where action starts. As we all know, it starts at the top. We are rising to the Prime Minister's challenge to business to do more to eliminate harassment. Safety is the core value of the Australian minerals industry. Our workers are our greatest asset and must be valued, respected and protected. Sexual harassment in any workplace is not inevitable or acceptable, but it is preventable, sending a clear message across the industry and the community that sexual harassment is unacceptable and will not be tolerated, has put the minerals sector on the right path for change. You'll be hearing much more from us on this over the rest of this year, building on the work we've already done to expand the scope of the industry's safety and health policy and making it clear that sexual harassment can and will be eliminated from Australian mining workplaces. The mental health of everyone in our industry is also a high priority, based on the principle that it's okay to speak up and seek help. Our workforce needs us to do more to build resilience and stronger mental health. And we aren't waiting for others to shape our future when it comes to the pressing need to get more skilled, talented and motivated people into the minerals workforce. We won't be able to meet growing global demand for our world-class minerals without first-class engineers, operators, analysts and explorers. That's why we're working closely with government as a partner on creating 5,000 apprenticeships and transforming the delivery of skills training through the Mining Skills Organisation pilot. I'm excited to be back here at Minerals Week and here at Parliament House and to take part in a great program of discussion on how Australian mining is changing the way it works in 2021 for our workforce, our customers and regional communities. I want to personally thank you all, our guests here tonight. Your presence and support as our industry continues to support all Australians means a great deal. It's now my very great honour and privilege to introduce the Prime Minister. I know that he is a regular visitor to mining regions and mine sites around Australia, which has given him first-hand experience of the economic potential of mining as a priority to build national resilience to the benefit of all Australians. I now ask you to welcome the Prime Minister of Australia, the Honourable Scott Morrison, MP.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Helen. To the Ngunnawal people, can I acknowledge them here tonight, their elders past and present, and of course for the future, can I particularly acknowledge the extraordinary work done by the resources sector in partnering with Indigenous people all around this country, and the tremendous opportunities that are being afforded for decent jobs and a real future, transforming remote, in particular Indigenous communities all around the country. Can I acknowledge any veterans here who are with us tonight? So many veterans who work across our resources industry. When I was up in the Pilbara recently and I was staying on site overnight, the significant number of veterans who find great employment in the resources sector, where their training, their skills, their experience, their values, their code, I know is appreciated by the resources sector, greatly appreciated and valued by the resources sector. So to any veterans who are here or serving members of our Defence Forces, can I simply say on behalf of a grateful nation, as I always do, thank you for your service. To Helen Coonan, the Chair of the Minerals Council, it's great to see you again, Helen, and thank you for your leadership. Can I extend the same thank you to all the directors of the Minerals Council of Australia, to ambassadors and high commissioners, especially who are here tonight, our partners in the resources sector all around the world. I particularly observed on the way in the ambassador from Japan. It's great to see you here. I'm looking forward to seeing Prime Minister Suga very, very soon, and the tremendous relationship we enjoy with Japan. To Ms. Tania, Constable, the CEO of Minerals Council, to my many colleagues who are here tonight. I'm not going to call the roll, but I'm certainly going to acknowledge, of course, the Deputy Prime Minister, Michael McCormack, who is here with us this evening. Michael, thank you for your support, not just for the resources sector, but for regional Australia. You're a great, passionate advocate for regional Australia, wherever you are. To Keith Pitt, if you're going to get stuck in a lift on a mining site, he's the guy you want to be with. We had that experience some time back up in northwestern Queensland. And I'm glad he knew how to get us out of that lift. And to all of those who helped us on that day, thank you. But it's right, Keith and I get to many of these places together, and Keith gets to so many more. As the Minister for Resources, you want to have someone who has his background as an electrical engineer, understands the industry so incredibly well. And thanks for your passion, Keith, that you bring to the job. I know that it is appreciated, certainly by the sector. Chris Bowen is here this evening. I acknowledge him, the Shadow Minister for Climate Change and Energy. To the many other ministers and colleagues who are joining us here tonight. To Ian McFarlane, my good old mate. We used to have dinner pretty regularly together when he served in this place, and the CEO of the Queensland Resources Council. Can I also acknowledge Tina Arena? That was a nice surprise. No finer talent in this country. I am the self-appointed patron of the Tina Arena Appreciation Society, not just in this place, but anywhere else. We enjoyed the concert on Saturday night, Jenny and I, Tina, and I heard she may be singing again, so I'd like to thank you very much for having me here tonight. I'll say a few words before she joins us again. I don't need to tell you how important the resources sector is. I don't need to tell myself how important the resources sector is, and my government doesn't need to be reminded. We know, we get it, we've always got it. It's in our DNA. Today's national accounts backed it up again. Mining investment contributing to the recovery, just like all sectors I note today in a set of national accounts that showed not only are there more jobs today in the Australian economy than there were before the pandemic, but the Australian economy is bigger today than it was before the pandemic hit. This is an extraordinary contribution that has been made by the Australian people. This is an Australians-led recovery, I said today. What we saw in the household sector, what we saw in dwelling investment, but particularly what we saw in business investment. The supports that we have put into the Australian economy over the course of the past 18 months, and particularly the last 12 months, as we've moved through the pandemic and Australia has saved lives and livelihoods, arguably better than almost any other country in the world today, our economic supports to save livelihoods was all about ensuring that we could restore a business-led economy. Our plans are not designed to put government at the centre of the economy. Our plans are not about government being at the centre of the economy. Our plans were always about ensuring that businesses, as they have led our economy to great prosperity in the past, will continue to lead our economy to great prosperity in the future, to the benefit of all Australians. And so as government stepped in, as was necessary, and as the second pandemic budget indicates, we continue to lean in. Our objective, though, is quite different as to what some might seek, and that is that we would continue to see business strengthen. And as business strengthens, it relies less and less and less on taxpayers. And with initiatives such as the Instant Expensing Initiative and so many others that are benefiting business investment across this country, we are seeing business stand tall on its feet again. We're seeing the Australian economy stand tall on its feet again. But this was in no small part due to the extraordinary work done by our resources sector over the course of the last 12 to 18 months. It was a great privilege for Melissa Price and I, in her electorate, to be in the Pilbara and to stand there with mine workers and say thank you. Thank you for being on site. Thank you for being on the job. Thank you for persisting through the difficulties of being separated from family, often because of border closures. People who hadn't seen their families if they lived in other states for a long period of time, but they stayed on the tools. And because they stayed on the tools, the Australian economy has seen its way through to this great point where we can say on the basis of the national accounts that our economy is bigger today than it was before the pandemic hit. Now, they can't say that in the United Kingdom, the United States, or so many other advanced economies around the world. They can't say it. It hasn't happened there, but it has happened here. And a key part of that has been the contribution of the resources sector over the course of this past 18 months. Now, we intend for that to continue as a government. We intend for that to continue. And our plan to support that is very straightforward. Firstly, get the fundamentals right. Lower taxes, only the regulation that's necessary, affordable energy, the skills you need to do the job. These fundamentals set resources companies up for success and ensure that they are competitive. It's no small thing to do what the resources sector does. And every inch you can take in improving the performance of that site. Prices change, they're high, they're low, they come, they go. But the basis of the success of any resources operation is how they do it and how hard they work to ensure it costs as little to produce as much as they possibly can. And that is what the resources sector can achieve better when they're not being loaded up with higher taxes, as some would like to do and have in the past, or hold them back through legislation or regulation that cripples investment and stymies investment. The fundamentals have got to be right for the resources sector to perform. To strengthen our access to markets in an uncertain world, to support diversification, both of markets and sectoral strengths. That is the second tier of what we're doing. The third is to drive more value add here in Australia, including capitalising on our resource base to support new industries as we lower global emissions. This is about future-proofing the industry in a world of strategic uncertainty and sweeping economic and technological change, including what we know as a far-reaching transition in the global energy economy, or what I call the new energy economy. It's real. It's going to have a significant impact on the operations of all Australian businesses, both now and into the future. And we are preparing Australia to be not just able to survive in that economy, but to thrive in it and to be successful in that economy. This plan is being pursued on many fronts. $20 million in this budget for the Global Resources Strategy, diversify exports and find new markets. unlocking and accelerating development through the strategic basin plans, which all of my members in my government support, I can assure you. Ensuring the sector has the workers and skills it needs through the National Resources Workforce Strategy, which was announced in February of 2021. $124.5 million to expand the Exploring for the Future program to drive investment by providing industry with data about potential mineral, energy and groundwater resources. $100 million in this budget to expand the Junior Minerals Exploration Incentive Scheme. And this builds on taking a proactive approach in last year's budget through our modern manufacturing strategy and through assistance from the Export Finance Australia and working with partner nations on offtake agreements. Particularly on the modern manufacturing strategy, the resources sector is a key sector that we've highlighted as an area of strategic advantage. It's one of our 6 key sectors where we are focusing and channeling our efforts for support. Now, particularly in these latter areas, Lynas has been leading the way, but there have been many other projects that are taking shape. The Albemarle lithium project at Kemerton, the Iluka rare earths projects at Eniba, and many others like the Arafura project in the Northern Territory and the ACM project in Dubbo. Now, I want Australia to show the world how resource manufacturing and heavy industries can work in a low emissions and indeed a net zero economy when it comes to emissions. I sort of call this the Frank Sinatra approach. We're going to do it our way in Australia, the Australian way. And if we can do it in the Pilbara, if we can do it there, we can do it anywhere, as Frank used to sing about New York. And this is the approach we have to take. Australia is going to lead the world in low emissions production in the resources sector, and the very sector that many far from here might suggest that is a reason why Australia, they would allege, is not making the commitments that are necessary. Quite the reverse will be the proof. Quite the reverse will be the proof. In the resources sector, you will demonstrate, as you already are, how Australia will be successful in the new energy economy, in adapting, in new technology, in new fuels, in new methods, in new partnerships, in new supply chains. You will demonstrate this. In fact, the resources sector, in my view, will be the pin-up industry in this country for how Australia will be not just making commitments, as many want to do, but importantly, are meeting those commitments and beating those commitments. True. That applause is for you. Australia has already reduced emissions by over 20% on 2005 levels. Over 20%. That's a fact. That is something that you have helped achieve. And the commitments that we have made out to 2030, you will help us meet. And more than help us meet it, I think you will showcase how Australia is meeting this. And so the very industry that many have sought to use to try and talk Australia down when it comes to these issues is the very industry that will prove that Australia is a leader when it comes to the new energy economy, that Australia is a leader in job generation and job creation. An Australian way, the Australian way, which says we can meet these commitments and not forsake our heavy industries, not forsake our mining industries, and most importantly, not forsake the people of regional Australia who others would seek to have us ignore for the sake of pursuing those commitments. We believe both can be achieved and will be achieved because I have great confidence in the skills and capacity of the resources sector to achieve that. We want to produce among the cheapest green hydrogen in the world by 2030 and 2050. The budget included $275 million in additional funding for clean hydrogen export hubs. Hydrogen hubs could be located in areas facing transitional pressures and nearby transmission assets, making them prospective sites for alternative energy-related uses. Examples of projects include the Alinta Fortescue Chichester Solar Gas Hybrid Project, which will deploy some 100 million litres of diesel generation annually from the Pilbara. Seen it. The Rio Tinto Gudai-Darri, I hope I've pronounced that right. Gudai-Darri, I should say. Gudai-Darri. Solar plant, which will reduce Rio Tinto's annual CO2 emissions by about 90,000 tonnes and create 2,000 construction jobs and 600 operational jobs. Horizon is investing some $50 million in low-carbon technologies, including battery and hydrogen power for its trains. Kirkland Lake Gold is investing $100 million in technology centres to reduce its carbon footprint. Methane capture at Anglo American's metallurgical coal operations is generating 140 megawatts of electricity, powering 90,000 homes and reducing emissions by 5 megatonne of CO2 per annum. That's 1% of total emissions in Australia. Glencore's carbon transport and storage project will show how carbon capture can work on an industrial scale. The budget has $265 million to support the development of CCS technologies. No nervousness or defensiveness from my government when it comes to carbon capture and storage. We don't need to be convinced at all. I'm a huge supporter of these efforts because they demonstrate a very practical Australian approach. The types of projects I've said to you are the Australian way. We will make our path to net zero, but we will set it. We will not have it determined by others. We will do it in accordance with Australia's national interests and the interests of Australian jobs and the young people of this country who know they can have a future in the very industry represented here tonight all around the country. That is the path that we're setting as a government. We will set it together with the Australian people and the industries that employ people all around this country. And we will not put those industries at risk or those jobs at risk to pursue it because we know that that is not necessary. It just requires the application of the approach that focuses on championing the technology which has always transformed industries and has always transformed economies. The budget backs this up with solid initiatives. It provides some $565 million to support low emissions international partnerships. In just the next couple of weeks, I'll be meeting with the G7 leaders and others, including President Moon of South Korea. And these are the issues that I'll be discussing with them amongst many others. And I'll be able to talk about what Fortescue is doing and seeking to change how they operate and partner with those who are looking to make steel in different ways all around the world and all around this country, and so many other innovations that I've already referred to. Because I will be demonstrating that Australia is making its path and we are getting results and we're going to continue to do that into the future. But there are things also that can put this at risk, practical things. We're a practical government and we know that the EPPC Act needs reform, and we currently have those reforms before the Parliament. Reforms that pose a simple question. Does Labor want your projects to go ahead or be held back by unnecessary red tape? That's the question we're putting to the opposition in the Parliament. Now, when we brought together these reforms, and I acknowledge Minister Susan Lee, who's with us here tonight, who brought those reforms together, no one's debating about reducing the environmental standards that apply. The industry's not debating it either. They're just simply saying, they're the standards, why does it have to take so long? Uphold the standards, apply the standards, ensure they're followed, and that is our government's view. Absolutely our government's view. The proposals we're seeking to have legislated aren't about changing the standards one way or the other. They're ensuring that decisions get made faster and consistent with those standards. When I took this to the National Cabinet, all states agreed that this was an important reform. Labor, Liberal states, chief ministers, premiers from all the states and territories said this was an important regulatory reform which should pass the Parliament. But Labor's standing in the way when it comes to that legislation. It's important that legislation passes. It's important that those who are seeking to invest in this country invest in a country which now, because of the various tax incentives and other arrangements we've put in place, it means tax on new investment in this country is not 30%, it's not 25%, it's 21%, according to Accenture and the work done by the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet. But you can create incentives, you can put it and take it to FID, and you can put it in your boardroom, but when you then have to start engaging with a process that is long-winded and costs you money and costs Australia jobs, well, that's not okay. And our proposals are designed to change that. So if people want to stand at this platform and tell you, therefore, the resources industry, they need to vote for this bill. And if they don't vote for this bill, you can't believe them. You can't believe them. They can give as fine a speeches as you like about that. But if they don't support this bill, that actually bring forward investment decisions that mean jobs in the resources sector, that uphold the environmental standards, then they do not support the resources sector. We're also focused on changes to the ARENA arrangements to ensure that we can provide support for energy efficiency projects, carbon capture technologies, including backstop technologies like direct air capture, clean hydrogen, projects to reduce emissions in aluminium, cement and steel, soil carbon technologies, and we want ARENA to be able to do that. And those projects are all incredibly important for the resources sector. If you're for the resources sector, you'll support those changes. If you're not for the resources sector, you'll vote against them. The Labor Party is going to vote against them, and they're terribly riven within their own ranks when it comes to those issues. On our side of politics, in my government, we're all for it. We're all for it because we want to see these investments take place and these technologies emerge, and we want to see Australia be competitive in the new energy economy. Gas basins, we're focused on unlocking those new gas basins. Beetaloo sub-basin in particular, for example, is one of the world's largest undeveloped onshore gas resources. We're for it, absolutely for it. We understand the important role gas will play, particularly over the next 30 years and more. We're all for it. But not everybody in this place is for that. If you support the resources sector, you're for that. If you don't, you're against it. And on greenfields agreements, we sought to have those greenfield arrangements legislated through the Parliament. We'd like to see them still legislated through the Parliament. They're important for investment, they're important for jobs, they're important for the resources sector. We're for it. We've always been for it. Our opponents in this place are against it. You may say, why has he come along and been so partisan tonight and talked about these issues? I'm talking about the policies. I'm talking about the things that make a difference in your business and the policies my government is seeking to put in place to ensure that you can employ more people, that you can earn more for Australia in the same way that you have over the last 18 months, which has seen this country and our economy perform better than almost any other advanced economy in the world. You did that. You did that. Australians all across this country did that. We enabled them to do it. We did our part, and you did your part. This Parliament needs to do its part to ensure that you can keep doing it. The sorts of changes I've talked to you about tonight, these important legislation on regulation, on new energy technologies, on greenfield sites development, on gas basins being opened up. This is all critical to Australia's economic future. And we will fight for these changes. And we will continue to pursue these changes because we believe in your sector. That is the test if you're for the resources sector and regional jobs in this country. If you're opposed to those things, then you're seeking to have no partnership in the future of regional Australia and the industries that support them. A lot to get done. You're doing it. We greatly appreciate the partnership we have with this sector all across the country. But mostly, as I conclude, I'm just incredibly grateful for what you have done over the course of these last 18 months. From those working on site to those working back in the head office, for those seeking the additional finance, for those keeping on the show on the road, for every single one of those days, you are a partner in the great result that we saw today for Australia, in our economy being stronger than it was before the pandemic because of your efforts, and that there are more Australians in work today than there were before the pandemic because of your efforts. Thank you very much for your contribution to Australia.
Good evening, Prime Minister, and to all the distinguished guests gathered here tonight in the Great Hall. Prime Minister, thank you for your comments tonight, for your leadership in keeping the country safe and your support of our industry. The hall sits on the land of the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people, and I offer my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. I would like to extend that respect to the traditional owners of all the lands on which members of the MCA operate. Last week marked 1 year since the destruction of Juukan Gorge. This event should never have happened, and I'm sorry for our actions and for the mistakes we made that led to the event. It breached our values and betrayed the trust of the Burragunti, Guruma and Binigura people. I acknowledge the magnitude of what was lost by our actions and the impact it has had on the PKKP industry here in Australia and also overseas. We at Rio Tinto are committed to changing. Much has been said about the impact of the pandemic over the past year and the challenges we've all faced. It has also given a lot to be thankful for. The actions of governments saved lives and allowed our industry to operate. They have given us more time with our families, our neighbours and local communities. And they have given us renewed appreciation for some of the things we took for granted. That's something worth reflecting on, how gratitude can drive us to improve, how it can spur us into action, not just by showing us what we have to lose, but also what we can gain by working together towards a shared goal. I'm grateful for the fact we're able to be here tonight, thanks to our governments and the innovations of health workers and scientists. I'm grateful for our ability to come together as a society to do the right thing. I'm thankful that the leaders in this room had the vision and the ability to steer us through uncertainty. Prime Minister, the work you and your government led and facilitated through the last year is a fantastic example to us all about going above and beyond to meet extraordinary challenges. I am proud that we as an industry have been able to support those efforts in a meaningful way. The mining industry is central to the Australian way of life. While the taxes and royalties we pay are significant, our contribution to society and the role we play in communities runs much deeper. It's about providing jobs that give us a sense of value and purpose. It's about contributing something useful, both to Australia and the rest of the world. It's about reinforcing the fabric of our society through hard work and innovation. But it's clear that society expectations of what we give back are shifting. And for me, recognising these often seismic shifts in the landscape is incredibly important. Now more than ever, we need to ensure our actions match our words, and we must not take the community for granted. It's about the jobs and taxes we create, as well as the lives and communities we build. No one knows what the world would look like in 20 years, but to successfully navigate the inevitable challenges ahead, we need to innovate, we need to think differently, and we must work together. Before I close, I would like to thank the MCA for organising this important event. And finally, please join me again in thanking the Prime Minister for his ongoing support of our industry and for all the work to keep Australia safe over the last year. Please enjoy the rest of the evening.